We will call the meeting to order. So the first thing, we'll have a roll call.
Allen.
Allen present. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Brown.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Opie.
Opie's present.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Shepro.
Shepro here.
Kenyon.
I'm here also. Say the first thing on the thing is we need a motion to approve the minutes after we adjust them. Mr. Leonard moves.
So moves, yes.
Mr. Brown seconds. Mrs. Allen would like to make a suggestion to improve
Thanks,
the
Mr.
minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and everyone. You'll notice in 5A of the minutes that we talked about moving on to the second round of grants, but it doesn't really say that we approved the first round. And I wondered if the committee would agree. The language currently is motion made by Leonard to proceed with a second round of mini grants, seconded by Frost, motion carried with a full consensus to proceed. And my suggestion is, and I apologize for not getting this to you in writing so you could see it. But
Mrs. Allen,
yeah.
the reason why it says that is because it wasn't on the agenda as an action item.
Exactly.
So
I wondered if, sorry. That's okay. I wondered if this was acceptable. Consensus was also reached by the committee to forward the $6,000 grants to Finance Committee so they could be included in the February full meeting, the February meeting of the full county board and promptly paid out to the recipients. Is that an acceptable way to describe what happened?
Yes, I think so, because a motion to do it would have been out of order because it wasn't on the agenda for the meeting. So exactly. we did that to kind of get it off of Agriculture's plate onto the Finance Committee agenda, where of course it got approved.
So we wouldn't have to wait.
I think the minutes are actually accurate in describing it the way they do.
So would you like the minutes to reflect that Mrs. Allen corrected the minutes or improved the minutes, whatever?
I don't think you should add that addition to it.
Okay.
We just discussed.
I think as they were read, that describes to me what happened. It doesn't explain why, but it is an accurate reflection of what occurred.
Well, the minutes
it was not approved in the formal sense.
Mrs. Allen, don't argue. As long as he's happy, we'll take a vote. We have a motion and a second. What?
There is no correction on that.
Just approval of the minutes.
Brown.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
Opie. Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Allen.
Allen, aye.
Kenyon.
Opie, yes.
Oh, there.
Thank you.
The minutes are approved. I don't see anybody raising their hand for public comment. We'll talk to our partners. Is Mr. Arnold online rather? He promised he'd be here yesterday. But, and he was bringing, wait a second, here he comes. You're up. You have anything coming up you'd like to tell us about?
Well, good morning. My apologies for my tardiness. And the fact that I'm tardy means that I did not make it into my office to bring the materials for the meeting. But briefly, I will tell you that the Farm Bureau is working on a couple of upcoming events. On Monday, we're going to do our 20th annual shopping spree for local food pantries, and Senator Karina Villa and Representative Barbara Hernandez will meet us quietly at the Jewel store in Batavia for the 20th year to do a legislative shopping spree. Their participation will benefit the Elburn and Countryside Food Pantry and the Marie Wilkinson Food Pantry, respectively. So we'll do that activity on Monday morning, but we're doing it, I don't want to say under the radar, but we did not promote the event in advance in consideration of the frontline workers at Jewel, because we have drawn a bit of a crowd in the past. So no cheerleaders, no marching band, just a kind of a quiet little shopping spree to benefit the local food pantries. We are also working on plans for a scaled back socially distanced Touch a Tractor open house in April, looking for a way to bring some of our partners in to talk to families about farms and food, but to do it in an outdoor setting where we can kind of control the crowds and keep things socially distanced. And this will be about the 15th year that we've done this. We did cancel it last year due to COVID, but provided that things continue to open up, we hope to be able to host that event, that open house for families, the third weekend of April. And I think at this point, I had some materials that I wanted to share with the committee, and I can bring them next month. One in particular is a 2021 report on environmental progress made by farmers over the last several years towards a number of environmental goals, but particularly goals that keep pollutants, nitrogen and phosphorus out of water supplies, whether that's groundwater that comes through tile lines or surface runoff. And our state organization has done quite a bit of work and put, I think, over $1 million into grants to county farm bureaus and farmers over the last 4 or 5 years to help us move towards goals established by the Illinois State Water Survey in terms of reducing nutrient loads in runoff. So that concludes my report, Mr. Kenyon.
Is there any questions of Mr. Arnold?
All good,
right.
thank you.
Who said that?
I just said it sounds good, thanks.
Okay. You want to say something?
No, I'm just approving of all the work that they're doing, especially with the runoff.
And we're going to see a lot of runoff, aren't we?
Oh boy.
Yeah. Well,
Oh
when the
boy.
snow melts.
Yeah.
Is Julie online from Northern Illinois?
Yes, I'm here. How are you today?
We're fine. We're missing you, but we're fine.
Miss you guys too. Miss that boardroom. I am coming to you today to report that we're still operating at highly increased capacity. So in January, we provided 7 million meals. That's slightly lower than the meals that we've been providing the previous few months. That's in large part due to not having the Farmers to Families Food Box Program product, but that is supposed to come back into our docket pretty soon. So 7 million meals is still significantly over our prior year and above our goal. So still operating at highly increased capacity. We were able to run some reports on all of our different counties. So I have some Kane County specific stats for you. We looked at the first 6 months of our fiscal year, so that's July 2020 to December 2020. And through that 6-month timeframe, we provided more than 6.9 million meals in Kane County, which is 42% increase over the prior year. So we're operating still very, very heavily in Kane County. We hosted over 50 mobile pantries and pop-up markets in that 6-month timeframe. Our agency network had an increase in meals about 17% from last year. You know, we've upped our child nutrition programming and senior nutrition program site, and we're assisting neighbors with SNAP about 46% more than we had been. So in Kane County specifically, I wanted to provide you with some of those numbers just because I know it's very relevant to this group, but it just shows, you know, that's just one of the 13 counties that Northern Illinois Food Bank serves. And so you can really kind of get a grasp on, you know, the increased operations that we're still doing and the increased need that's really still out there in our communities. Moving forward, we've been in touch with a lot of our legislators. We're really focused on continuing to get federal nutrition programming supported and strengthened in upcoming COVID stimulus legislation. So that's a big thing on our agendas right now. And then a little bit more on a fun note, I wanted to share about some of the events that the food bank will be hosting in the upcoming weeks and months. On March 7th, we're hosting our annual Cup of Hope event. So this event is now going to be all virtual. It's put on by our Executive Women's Council. And this year, we're going to have performances by the Chicago cast of Hamilton. So should be a fun event, all virtual. So, you know, feel free to sit on your couch and watch some Hamilton. And then on the flip side, if you are feeling like you want to get active, our Fight Hunger 5K 10K is slated for April 17th. We're going to have a limited in-person event as well as virtual options. So we're starting to prep for that, and I'm sure I'll have more information for that for you soon. So those are my updates. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Julia? Move down the line to water quality sampling from Jody Wilnick.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. We just have a quick update this morning. We did successfully complete all 10 samples in the month of January, the 3rd Tuesday, and it was almost like a holiday present that we received when we got the results back, because they're probably officially some of the first results we're seeing from our unincorporated areas and our rural areas in the county, comparing the surface runoff to the tile runoff. And so we're already seeing some trends, and it'll be very interesting in the coming months as we continue to sample, as we get the spring melt and then the spring rains. But overall, the phosphorus levels on all of the samples were very, very low. And we are seeing higher nitrogen levels in the tile water compared to the surface water. So we look forward to, we had to unfortunately cancel our February sampling event due to the weather this week on Tuesday. It was just too cold to try to ice break through there. But we're hoping to grab the February samples next week when we get a bit of a warm up. So we're excited to provide the committee with ongoing reports as this sampling progresses. Thank you.
Any questions for Jody? By the way, it was a great report you had the other day at, which was that committee? That was for development.
Development, yeah.
The record-long development committee that Mr. Martin hosted. It's the longest one ever, but it was a great report.
Thank you.
Kane County Farmer Mini Grant Survey, Matt Hansley.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, everyone. Just a moment here while I pull up my presentation.
All right. We like pictures.
All right. Today, I'm happy to provide some updates on the second round of the Farmer Mini Grant Program. We just recently concluded the second round, and I'm really happy to report on some pretty significant success that we had in reaching several more farmers in the second round than the first round. So just to kind of summarize where we're at, we did reach and receive survey applications and mini grant applications from 6 farmers in the first round. And then in the second round, we went on to receive 12 completed surveys and grant applications, as well as 2 additional just the surveys that were submitted as well. So a really good increase in the response rate. And we did make a pretty good push in the second round to reach out through calls and additional emails to connect with more farmers. So far we have 18 total mini grant applications submitted, as well as 20 total of the farm operators surveys completed. Just to give a quick snapshot of some of the stats, among the respondents, we did have 6 livestock farms, 5 apiaries, 4 farms that are currently using greenhouses, 15 farms that are using farm stands or some other type of on-farm retail, and 11 farms that are currently using some type of online order fulfillment. We're just getting started looking at this data, so we expect that in subsequent meetings, we're going to be able to provide a more thorough rundown of this data once we've had a chance to analyze it. But I just wanted to kind of share a quick snapshot of where we're at so far. So for much of the rest of the presentation, I just want to acknowledge the round 2 applicants for the farmer mini grant program, and then put those farmers forward as our recommendation for funding for this second round of the program. So the first is Garlic Breath Farm. They operate out of Elburn. This is a husband and wife team. Even though they work full-time, they still operate a small farm, and we've been happy to work with them in the past. They did participate in some of the training programs for wholesale distribution that we sponsored through the Growing for Cane program a couple of years ago. So they've been really active in the community, and we're really appreciative of their involvement. Full Bushel Farms is a relatively new farm operation. They actually operate at the Primrose Farm out in St. Charles. And so that's where their primary distribution site is for the food that they grow there. And they really pride themselves on having a sustainable operation and being transparent about their products and their growing techniques. We also have Muirhead Farms, which in addition to, they manage the Frank Lloyd Wright farmhouse, and they do offer tours there. But in addition to that, they do have their production operations, which includes their primary farm near Elgin at the Plato Center, as well as a second location out in Western Illinois near the Quad Cities. We also have Windy Acres, which operates here in Geneva. They are really known for their agritourism operation. They have a number of festivals throughout the year and offer really a variety of different types of plants and honey and pumpkins, apple cider, donuts. You can really just find a strong variety of products on their farm. Sam, the Sweet Corn Man, this is operated by Tim Slepica out in Maple Park. He sells through a variety of chains. Mainly he sells through his on-farm market stand, but he also distributes through grocery stores and restaurants. His family started their operation in DuPage County originally back in the 1940s, but then purchased land near Maple Park in the 1970s, and that's where they've been operating ever since. Bergen Farms operates also near Maple Park. This is a family farm. They sell beef, chicken, lamb, turkey, and they primarily distribute through farmers markets. Lankitis Holsteins is the dairy operation. They started really with just 5 animals back in, let's see if I have the year, back in 1983, and that has since grown to over 100 animals on their site. And most of their milk is sold through Dean Foods out in Huntley. And they also do breeding and selling cattle as part of their other business operation as well. Sheepwreck Farm operates in Elgin. They are a fiber operation. Their primary business is selling wool products, but they also produce honey and have eggs and have some other food products and chickens on their farm as well. Another newer operation is White Farms Apiary out in Batavia. They do have a small pumpkin patch and a vegetable garden that the apiary is meant to complement. And they're pretty much able to sustain their operation with the sale of honey, but they have had some challenges over the past couple of years with some losses of their hive population, and they mentioned that those can be, pretty significant, a significant expense to replace those. The Lily Lake Organic Farm is a 224-acre certified organic farm near Maple Park, and pictured here is Dave Campbell, and he does a lot of educational work. He does have a number of on-farm workshops and trainings, and does a lot to try to educate the community of farmers on his growing practices and what he's learned over the years. And you can also find one of his presentations on the Conservation Foundation's website. He's giving a talk about sustainability and best management practices for preserving the integrity of farming soil. Grandma's Farm Fresh Eggs. This is a small family farming operation near Sugar Grove. They primarily sell eggs, lamb, beef, chickens, and honey. And lastly, we have Charity Blooms. This is an organization that operates a garden right near the Murray Wilkinson Food Pantry. And this operation actually supplies the Murray Wilkinson Food Pantry with a lot of the fresh produce that they grow. So they pretty much were founded to create that relationship and to be a source of fresh produce for them. And I also just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge the farmers who filled out a survey, but opted not to apply for a grant. And just because we really value the time that they took and their contribution to this really great pool of data that we're going to be able to dig into and is going to help guide our work going forward. The first is Allgrass Farms. Actually, this should be Carpentersville. They operate on the farm, the Forest Preserve farm up in Carpentersville, where they've been leasing land from the Forest Preserve. And they're really known for their grass-fed beef, their raw milk, the free-range broiler chickens, eggs, turkeys, and pasture-raised pork, as well as local organic vegetables. And lastly, another apiary operation. This is Lawrence's Honeybee Haven. They've been producing honey for the past 41 years, and they're located in the Fox Valley. And okay, so moving on to our recommendation for funding going forward, we do want to present 2 options. So the first option would use the remaining $4,000 of Compeer funding and dividing that up evenly between the 12 new round 2 grantees. So that would be, if we did that, that would be $333 per farmer. Then option B, which is our staff recommendation, is to combine the $4,000 of Compeer funding with an additional $8,000 from Kane County's Fund 400. And so that would be a total of $12,000 and would allow us to still offer $1,000 per each of the new round 2 farmers. So in that way, we would be consistent with the round 1 distribution, in which we would be awarding $1,000 to each of those 6 original farmers. And again, our recommendation is for option B. And
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, thank you, Matt. I just want to add, Matt, so the committee is aware, Fund 400 is our county's economic development fund, and it is entirely funded through the Grand Victoria Riverboat monies that the county receives. It's replenished every year through the internal grant process. Some of that Fund 400 does support some of our staff salaries for economic development activities, but it's also been used in the past, probably most notably the export grant program over the last years, which has provided up to $5,000 grants for manufacturing companies in the county. And we've had some other ways of leveraging other grants that the county's received by using that fund to enhance it. So we're so excited about the response that we got, and I think we'd really like to recommend that the county do the second round with $1,000 awards. That we're proposing to add $8,000 out of that fund. There is money already budgeted and available for economic development activities such as this. So I just wanted to let you know where that money is coming from and what it was budgeted for. Thank you.
Would that be Resolution A?
Yes, that'd be the resolution. Well, we put in a resolution with the numbers not filled in because we just received the applications on Monday was the deadline, reviewed them on Tuesday. We weren't sure how many applicants we were going to get. We were very pleased to get so many in this round and have this option for you so that you have a resolution in your packet that would reflect, well, could be modified to reflect either option, but it's already set up for option B if you decide to go that route.
Are there any questions of Matt or? Okay, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to show my ignorance, but I need to do it. In talking about the different applicants we received, one of the categories was apiaries, and listening to your presentation, are those bee farms, honeybee farms, or what is an apiary?
Yeah, so they don't necessarily need to be operating on a conventional farm, but they do. But they are honey producing operations, and they are selling that to the community. So when we defined the types of agricultural operations and businesses that we wanted to include, we recognize the contribution and value that these apiaries provide and recognize them as agricultural businesses. So some of them are, smaller than others. But they all do sell their product in one form or another to the community, and they do put that back into their operations.
A good job for a retired insurance executive, with a lot of spare time.
Well, I want to thank you, Matt, for the answer to that. And secondly, I would like to endorse option B, as long as Mr. Van Kerkhoff says monies are available in that fund, the 400 fund. I think it serves a dual purpose. Number one, we are rewarding the people that applied, and we're also setting a precedent that if people do apply and follow the requests and applications for grants, there's a very strong likelihood they're going to receive monies. And so I think option B, I would recommend that to the committee.
So that would be your motion.
I'll move, yes.
And it would be seconded by Mr. Brown.
Alan seconds.
There's discussion on this motion. Okay, I heard it on a radio or TV or saw it. If we didn't have bees, it would be a matter of months before we wouldn't have food. Because that's how important they are, and we take them all for granted, all the work they do. That's the purest form of food.
Yep.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor at second. Is any more discussion? Seeing none.
Brown,
Yes.
Bras,
Yes.
Kobe,
Copy, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez, Allen,
Alan, aye.
Kenyon.
It stands approved, and we'll move it on to up the board level. Next thing we have, are you done with that?
Well, we have one more thing.
I wasn't going to go beyond him.
Advance the slide. And we weren't anticipating requesting this, but we learned a lot through this process. So we're actually, staff is requesting consensus to actually do a round 3. So round 1, which was released in December, as much as we worked diligently to get accurate email addresses and do an email campaign with help from the Farm Bureau and get the word out, that resulted in the 6 applications right before Christmas. We did then propose doing a round 2. And I want to thank our planning team. We divvied up the lengthy list and made personal phone calls for round 2 to make sure they'd seen the email, if they had any questions. And we learned a lot through that process. One, we had some really long conversations with our farmers, which were fantastic. But we also learned that there was confusion out there with this, very simple application and survey request, and the plethora of COVID-related federal and state programs, our county's program for application that were much more complicated. So there's just a lot out there for any business owner to consider. So the personal phone calls really helped encourage them to apply. So we're happy with the results that we got 12 additional applications, but we looked at the list again and we realized there's probably at least 6 to 10 farms out there that we weren't able to reach by telephone, or we didn't have the right information for them, but we can find them on the website or whatever. So we'd actually like to continue our outreach work, which has been really good, and do a round 3. We propose that round 3 grants would also be paid for out of Fund 400 Economic Development, since we've now exhausted the $10,000 Compure grant. But really looking at this as using those Fund 400 monies to leverage the grant program that was, made possible by the $10,000 grant, and try to capture some more farms. The value of the county is, if we get 4 or 6 more surveys completed, along with rewarding them with a grant, that's really valuable for showing Kane County's commitment to our growers and building our database to understand what their needs are going into the rest of this year and into the future. So if we had a consensus to move forward with a round 3, again, those results and funding recommendations would be presented at your meeting in March and go through, along with a corresponding resolution regarding the awardees and the funding amounts.
So if I don't hear otherwise, I assume we hope you go on with number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mr. Chairman, Alan?
Yes, Mrs. Allen.
I just wanted to say that I think this outreach is terrific. And the whole reason for our committee is to try and prove that we are grateful to have about 1/3 of our county used for agricultural means. And I think this is very inventive, and we should reward our staff by encouraging this process. I'm also remembering, isn't this the fund, Mark, that we used when we used to have, on the occasions when we had those big meeting lunch events at the Q Center, where we congratulated some of our small business owners on innovative things that they did. And we're not going to be able to do those for a while. So I think this is a great way to do our economic development outreach in an affordable way.
Yeah, those were also supported through the Grand Victoria Riverboat Grants internal application. That was actually a separate set aside than the general economic development operations for Fund 400, but it came from the same Grand Victoria Riverboat for a lot of the same purposes.
Is there any other comments or questions? Can we move on to letter C? Tom Colby would like to talk to you about solar energy.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a few other items before that I just wanted to touch on briefly before moving on to Tom. So the last item with this presentation, I just wanted to highlight a survey that's being organized by the University of Illinois. They've sponsored a farm to food bank survey, and the goal of this is really to identify sources of food that aren't really being put to use, that aren't being sold, that's just essentially unused excess that's grown by farms, and trying to find a way to divert that to address hunger relief efforts. So the university, along with their partners, is organizing this survey, and we'd like to promote this to our farmers so that they can help the university understand that. We certainly recognize that we've been putting a lot of survey information out there, so we're sensitive to that, but we do feel that this is an important topic that's being researched, and we just want to put some of our attention behind this. And so if there are no questions, that concludes my item B.
Okay.
And then there were a few other points. So there is also a budget adjustment resolution before the committee as well. This is to make some adjustments to the Growing for Cane budget for FY21. And this is really just a housekeeping measure. The first part of this is to accept the second Compeer grant that was awarded to the county for $10,000. You'll recall that this pool of funding, part of it is to support the proposed idea of a virtual farmers market later this spring. And then the other half of it would support, would be a match to the pollinators demonstration and planning project that Janice has talked about previously. So we're just adjusting the budget to accept that funding in fiscal year 21. And the other elements of this adjustment are just to reflect some of the spending that took place last year and the planned expenses that are going forward. And primarily this applies to the JJC Farm to School program. And so we're not making any adjustments to the programs or making any changes or adding any new expenses. We're essentially just adjusting the timing of when we're receiving funding from USDA and when we've been spending that money. So that's essentially what this budget adjustment resolution is for.
Mr. Leonard?
Leonard so moves.
Mr. Brown seconds the resolution. Is there discussion from the audience? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Brown?
Yes.
Froz?
As yes.
Colby?
Colby, yes.
Leonard?
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez? Allen?
Allen, aye.
Yes. The resolution is passed. Now, do we want to move to the solar?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do have one more item, if I may.
Come on.
The last.
you just moved too slow.
I apologize for that. I just want to give everybody a chance to chime in if they need to.
Oh, the box program. We need box lunches for the committee here.
Right. So the last item is a letter petition that's being put forward by an organization called the Chicago Food Policy Action Council. And basically what they're trying to do is to make some improvements to the USDA's Farmers to Families Food Box program. There have been some difficulties with smaller farmers being able to participate in this just because they don't necessarily have the scale and what certain distributors are looking for. It does also call for some additional changes in terms of just offering a little bit more variety in terms of what's being offered in the boxes that are specific to community needs. So it's essentially just looking to make some enhancements to the program. And, we certainly recognize that it's been a very significant success, but we think that this is something that could help Kane County's farmers to potentially be able to sell their product to distributors who are supplying this program. And so that's why we're putting it forward for the committee's endorsement.
You don't have any samples?
I'm afraid I didn't bring any today. Sorry.
Well, we go on the visual, and taste is very important. Taste. So what do you want us to do? By
Consensus?
By consensus, we'll endorse. Does anybody object? Seeing none, we will endorse your program for Chicago Food Policy Action Council. You're getting kind of long with these things.
Thank you.
Now can we talk to Mr. Copey? Mr. Copey, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hi. Thank you for the invitation to speak on behalf of solar. I'm going to make it as brief as I can, as simple as I can. As we all know, electric driven vehicles are becoming a reality. There's more and more electric driven tools, and things are tending towards electricity, and there's going to be a huge demand coming up in the very, very near future. And 20, 30 years out, according to an article I read by Elon Musk and experts in the field, that electricity demand is going to go up another threefold in 20 to 30 years. So I was hoping that the county would consider the feasibility of incorporating solar on a large scale into our finance, mainly for offset of our costs, one, and two, possibly for an excellent revenue stream. We're poised in a position, financially speaking, where we can attract funds, bond funds, for 1%, 2%, 3% to purchase equipment that has a 30-year amortization and maintenance schedule. If you consider those types of numbers and those parameters, what we're essentially are doing is buying the equipment, solar panels, at today's price and paying for them at tomorrow's rates. There's an estimation that if you look at the history of rates have never decreased; they've always increased, and that's relative to inflation. So this is sort of an inflation hedge, an electricity hedge on our behalf. And if we ignore it, I think we'll be on the outside looking in. I'll give you an example. There's a county in California that, of course, they have better sunshine days than we do, and their profit margin is better than ours, and they have a higher use than perhaps we do because they run a lot of air conditioners. But they took on a project. They actually own the field. They own the electricity. They sell the electricity and offset it with creative means. And what they have produced over the lifespan of the project is $60 million into the budget. So it's substantial. And with cheap money today, paying for it with expensive rates tomorrow, I think it is feasible. But I don't know. The reason I would like to bring this to the committee's attention is to have an expert give us a feasibility study, and that's basically where we're at, whether the concept is even feasible. So, with no more further ado, you get the gist of the idea, and I was just hoping that the Agriculture Committee could take a lead role and produce a vision. I'm thinking nothing less than 100 acres of solar, and if anybody's got any other ideas, let's hear it. But it's time for the discussion. It's a real issue, and let's get it on. Thank you very much.
Would anybody like to weigh in on the discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Bates here.
Good.
So thank you, Mr. Copey, for this wonderful introduction of solar to the Agricultural Committee. The Energy and Environmental Committee is looking into community solar and something that's called behind the meter solar. Progressive business solutions. There has already been a development at, they call it the Fox Valley Solar Farms. That's at Mooseheart, Fox Metro, and 2 other locations are already doing this in Kane County. And so the Environmental Committee is looking into this. We're going to have a speaker in March about this. So wonderful introduction, and thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Allen knows of another solar experiment, right, Mrs. Allen?
Absolutely. Tom, are you proposing that we would try and use Kane land that we have for a solar farm?
Yes, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. We have several elements in our favor. One is we can borrow money for half of what anybody else can borrow money. 2, we own property. 3, we have a tremendous appetite for electricity just to offset our own demand. And 4, we need revenue. So if that answered the question, I do intend, my vision would be that we utilize property that we already own, and or buy a piece of property that may be more sensible. But of course, you're getting into spending money, and there's no sense in that if we already own properties. So, and something that maybe even the Forest Preserve would consider partnering with. I don't know. I hope that answered the question.
Mark, do you have anything to add? You're going to get handed this football.
No, I would just encourage the Agricultural Committee, which Tom has approached to work closely with the Energy Environmental Committee. Jody Walnick has staff working closely with Chairperson Bates on that issue. If there were county ownership or land involved, that would cross over into administration committee with facilities and that kind of thing. So we're happy to be involved to any extent, but it would be a sort of a cross-cutting effort from different departments.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, Brown here. Thanks, Mr. Copey, for bringing this up. I'm intrigued by it. I think obviously you hit it right on the head. I think your solar power is the power of the future. However, I would suggest in my past life as a city councilman in Batavia, when we purchased into a coal-fired plant, we did it with all the expertise of all the experts in the industry and recommendations, because we saw that the electric power cost was going to not do nothing but go up. So we spent a couple years investigating this and ended up purchasing into this coal-fired plant. And then the world changed dramatically. I mean, I can remember some of the conversations that we had about all the, everywhere you go, there's more usage required. Everybody's buying microwaves. Everybody's putting in bigger houses. They're all requiring more lights. Well, then along came the LEDs and all these other great inventions that came up that don't require as much electricity today as what was required when we had this great conversation. And it was a terrible mistake. It was something that we all did based on the information that we had. We made the right decision. And then 10, 15 years later, it was a terrible decision. So it's costing the taxpayer, or not the taxpayers, it's costing the utility payers of the city of Batavia, and along with, I think, 300 and some other communities that bought into the same thing, more money than what we anticipated. So it ended up not being a good thing. So if the county's interested in getting into this, you have to realize that now you're going to be venturing into, you're now a utility company. Not sure that the county's set up to be a utility company. So there's a lot to consider. It's going to take a long time, and be very cautious in your consideration.
Is that Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Well said.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Copey. There's no question about it. It's fraught with certain hazards, I'm sure, but I believe that they're unlike the coal-fired industry. I can just imagine the maintenance problem that you have and the manpower problem that you would have, and dealing with labor force, and the problems just compound and compound. These are these solar panels. They are what's the term? Not analog. The opposite analog. They are digital. Well, yeah. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. They're solid state.
Oh, okay.
So and they have a bona fide life expectancy to them, and you can get guarantees for that life expectancy. And they just they are expensive. And but as far as manpower and environmental concerns and the horrendous maintenance, I can just imagine you guys had with that coal-fired plant is seemingly endless. But and solar doesn't incorporate hardly any of those aspects on that scale, not even marginally. So it's but still we're down to studying if it's feasible or not. And these regards that you have, they need to be aired out in this feasibility concept first. This primary goal is to say, will this work for the county? And that's really the question I want to answer now. I'm not in favor of building something that doesn't work or is marginally profitable. I want something that really, really works, and I want somebody to prove that it works, and I want to see it in real life that it works. And that county in California is a perfect example. That thing sits there in gins, and the only thing that sees it is the birds occasionally, and it just gens and gens and gens, and they're just making money. So that's the other side of the argument, and I understand that, and I'm not here to argue. I just want to know the truth. I want to know if it's feasible.
Mr. Brown.
Just my comment to that, Mr. Colby. I'm not here to argue either. I think it's a great conversation. I'm just really strongly advising, as I've been through this, be very careful and consider everything, because I'll tell you, when we made the decision in Batavia to do what we did, it was with a complete, all 14 of the aldermen voted in favor of it, and we thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then the world changed. So you're making a huge commitment, so be very careful.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
At any rate, this is Mr. Colby's giving us the first step. And it will coordinate with the Energy and Environment Committee. Maybe there'll be a solution. It's too bad we can't put these things on empty landfills. Well, the one by me is 120 some acres, but you can't anchor them into the landfill.
Oh, somebody needs to mute.
Anybody else make any other comments or suggestions?
Well, Energy and Environmental will be working on this issue. We've already taken it up, and we'll be moving forward on it. There's some discussion about even forest preserve land possibly being used someday.
Let me tell you, with experience, many acres of forest preserve land cannot be used to generate revenue. We get grants. We love grants. It's free money, but we can't put a solar farm in certain areas. And besides that, we save this land to recreate and not raise energy.
Well, I've got a lot to learn.
But look into it. Talk to Monica. I'm sure she'll be glad to talk to you about why we can do it in some places and can't do it in others.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, Alan?
Alan?
I have two questions. One is for Mr. Brown, how long was the commitment that the communities made going into the coal-fired process? And my second question is, could Mr. Copey direct us to the information he has about the California company or the California project that succeeded?
Mr. Brown?
30 years.
30 years, that's a long time, especially if
we're committed for 30 years to pay at a rate higher than what you can buy it from.
So when did you start?
Oh, I think we're about 12 or 15 years into it.
It's a long-term commitment.
Well, I think Tom just mentioned 25 years with the solar. So yes, we're definitely talking about long-term commitments.
Tom, I hope you attend the Energy and Environment Committee meeting and listen to their discussion and offer what suggestions you have to them, and we'll work together and hopefully find a solution. Chairman. We have a solar farm on one of our farms in Burlington. It's 15 acres and we get $1,000 an acre a year. And that's pretty good rent money if you, but not as good as marijuana farms, but then Illinois is really slow on the uptake on this, and there's only a few of them, and now they're talking bigger solar farms. And one other plus, you have to deal with Commonwealth Edison. So if you think the railroads are unreasonable, to deal with Commonwealth Edison. Is there anything else to come before the committee? Now we need a motion to place reports on file. Mr.
Leonard, so moves.
Mr. Brown seconds. We're ready to vote.
Brown,
Yes.
Braz,
Cross is gone.
Gopi, Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez, Allen,
Allen, aye.
Kinnon.
Yes. The reports are on file now. Even though Penny Wagman's not here, we need somebody to adjourn the meeting. Who would like to do that?
I move we adjourn.
Mr. Brown moves to adjourn. Mr. Leonard seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign.